The Greyhound bus pulled into the station at 6:47 inches the morning, and my bones ached from 18 hours of sitting. I could have flown from Tampa to Columbus, but after 2 years of watching my mother's medical bills pile up, every dollar mattered. Besides, the bus gave me time to think, time to worry about why my daughter Melissa hadn't answered her phone in 3 weeks. The last time we spoke, she'd sounded strange, distant. When I asked about Thanksgiving plans, she'd laughed, but it wasn't her laugh. It was hollow, rehearsed. She said Derek's family would be visiting, that the house would be full, that maybe I should stay in Florida a little longer. "My mother doesn't need you anymore, Mom. She passed away. You can come home now." But her voice cracked on the word home. My mother died 6 weeks ago. Melissa didn't come to the funeral. She sent a text message. Not even a call. Just a text that said, "Can't make it. Derek needs me here. Love you." That wasn't my daughter. Melissa had adored her grandmother. She'd spent every summer at Grandma's house in Clearwater, learning to make key lime pie and collecting seashells. The Melissa I raised would have moved heaven and earth to be at that funeral. So here I was, 64 years old, exhausted, grief-stricken, standing in a bus station parking lot in Columbus, Ohio, about to take a taxi to my own house without telling anyone I was coming. My house. The Victorian on Maple Street that my late husband Richard and I had restored with our own hands 30 years ago. The house where we raised Melissa. The house I'd left in her care when I moved to Florida to help my dying mother. The taxi driver was a chatty man named Earl who wanted to talk about the Buckeyes. I nodded along, not really listening, watching the familiar streets pass by. When we turned onto Maple Street, my heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Something was wrong. The house looked different. The white paint was dingy, the wraparound porch cluttered with plastic furniture that didn't belong to us. Richard's rose bushes, the ones he'd spent years cultivating, were dead. Just brown sticks poking out of the ground. There were 4 cars in the driveway. 4. Melissa drove a Honda Civic. I didn't recognize any of these vehicles. I paid Earl and stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, my suitcase at my feet. A child's bicycle lay abandoned on the front lawn. A basketball hoop had been installed over the garage door, the kind you bolt directly into the siding. Richard would have had a heart attack. I walked up the porch steps, my hand trembling as I reached for the door. I still had my key. I'd kept it on my keychain for 2 years, right next to the key to my mother's condo. The lock turned smoothly, and I pushed the door open. The smell hit me first. Stale beer, dirty dishes, something fried and greasy. The entryway was chaos. Shoes everywhere, at least 15 pairs. Men's work boots, women's sandals, children's light-up sneakers, none of them Melissa's. Coats piled on the bench Richard had built, coats that belonged to strangers. I heard voices from the kitchen, laughter, the clink of silverware, the sound of a television playing cartoons at full volume. I set down my suitcase and walked toward the noise, my footsteps silent on the hardwood floors that desperately needed refinishing. The kitchen was full of people I'd never seen before. A heavy woman in her 40s stood at my stove, flipping pancakes in the cast-iron skillet that had belonged to my grandmother. 2 children, maybe 8 and 10, sat at the breakfast bar with tablets in front of them, ignoring the food on their plates. A man about the same age as the woman slouched at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone, his feet propped up on the chair where Richard used to sit for Sunday breakfast. None of them noticed me. "Excuse me," I said. The woman at the stove screamed and dropped the spatula. The children looked up. The man at the table slowly lowered his phone, his expression shifting from surprise to hostility. "Who the hell are you?" the woman demanded, her hand pressed against her chest. "How did you get in here?" I felt a strange calm settle over me, the kind of calm that comes right before a storm. "I'm Gloria Hawkins. This is my house. The better question is, who are you?" The woman's face flushed red. "This is Derek's house. I'm his sister, Brenda. That's my husband, Carl, and our kids. If you're some friend of Melissa's, you need to leave right now before I call the cops." "Where is my daughter?" Brenda turned back to the stove, dismissing me. "She's at work. She cleans offices downtown. Night shift, gets home around 7 in the morning, sleeps during the day. You can talk to Derek if you have questions. He's in his office." "His office?" "Upstairs. Used to be some kind of sewing room." "My sewing room. the room where I'd made Melissa's prom dress, her wedding dress, countless Halloween costumes, the room with the bay window that looked out over the backyard where Richard had built a treehouse that still stood. I didn't respond to Brenda. I walked through the kitchen, past the dining room, where I could see more evidence of occupation. Someone's laptop on Richard's antique table, mail addressed to people I'd never heard of, a dog bed in the corner, though I saw no dog. The stairs creaked as I climbed them. Every creak was familiar, but everything else was wrong. The photographs on the wall had been replaced. My family photos, gone. In their place were pictures of strangers at barbecues, graduations, beach vacations. Derek's family, I realized. They'd hung their own pictures in my house. I passed the bathroom. Wet towels on the floor, multiple toothbrushes, a man's razor sitting in a puddle of water on the counter. The master bedroom door was open, and I glanced inside. The bed was unmade, clothes strewn everywhere, a large television mounted on the wall where Richard's painting of Lake Erie used to hang. Derek's voice came from my sewing room, loud, confident. "Yeah, bro, the setup is perfect. My parents moved into the master bedroom last month. Brenda and Carl have the guest room. Their kids are in the basement. Melissa doesn't mind. She knows family comes first, you know?" I pushed the door open without knocking. Derek sat at a desk, covered in computer equipment, 3 monitors glowing in front of him. He was heavier than I remembered, softer around the middle, his hairline receding. He wore sweatpants and a stained t-shirt at 9 in the morning. When he saw me, his face went pale. "Gloria," he said, standing up quickly. "We weren't expecting you. Melissa didn't say you were coming. She didn't know." I looked around the room. My sewing machine was gone. My fabric storage was gone. Everything that had made this space mine had been replaced with gaming equipment and computer screens and a mini refrigerator humming in the corner. "Where is my daughter, Derek?" "I told you, she's at work. Night shift. She'll be back soon." "She cleans offices now?" "Melissa has a degree in accounting. She was a senior analyst at Morrison Financial." Derek shrugged, not meeting my eyes. "Budget cuts. They let her go about a year ago. It's been tough. That's why my family moved in, to help with expenses. Everyone's pitching in." His hand moved to scratch his neck. His eyes shifted to the left. I'd spent 64 years learning to read people. Derek was lying. "I'd like to wait for her," I said. Sure. He was already turning back to his computer. "Make yourself comfortable downstairs. Living room should be empty." I went back downstairs and sat on the couch, which was covered in someone else's laundry. Through the window, I watched the street where Melissa had learned to ride her bike, had walked to school every morning, had kissed Derek for the first time on the porch when she was 22 years old. I'd liked him then. He'd been charming, attentive, ambitious. He'd had a good job in sales, a nice car, a confident handshake. Richard had been skeptical, said there was something slippery about him, but I'd told my husband he was being overprotective. Now I wished I'd listened. I sat there for 7 hours. Brenda brought her children through multiple times, glaring at me each time. Carl came down for a beer around noon and another around 3. An older couple arrived around 2, loaded with shopping bags from Costco. They stopped short when they saw me. "Who's this?" the man asked, jerking his chin in my direction. "Melissa's mother," Brenda said from the kitchen. "Just showed up this morning, let herself in with a key." The man laughed. "The mother who abandoned her daughter to go play nurse in Florida? That's rich." He settled into Richard's recliner like he owned it. His wife disappeared into the kitchen without acknowledging me. I stood up, my patience finally cracking. I did not abandon my daughter. I took care of my dying mother. And this is my house. My name is on the deed. "Someone is going to explain what's happening here," the man smirked. "Your house? Melissa signed this place over to Derek 2 years ago, right before you left. It's his house now, which means his family is welcome here." "That's impossible," I said. "This house is held in a family trust. Melissa couldn't sign it over even if she wanted to." Something flickered in his eyes. Uncertainty. But before he could respond, I heard a car door slam outside. Footsteps on the porch, slow and heavy. The door opened. My daughter walked in, and I barely recognized her. Melissa had always been healthy, athletic. She'd run marathons, hiked mountains, played tennis every weekend. The woman standing in the doorway was a ghost, thin to the point of frailty, her collarbones sharp against her gray cleaning uniform. Her hair, once thick and auburn like mine, was pulled back in a messy ponytail, streaked with premature white. She had dark circles under her eyes that looked like bruises. She was 36 years old and looked 60. She froze when she saw me. Her bucket of cleaning supplies slipped from her hand and hit the floor with a crash. "Mom?" Her voice was barely a whisper. I stood up and took a step toward her. She flinched. Actually flinched, like she expected me to hurt her. That flinch told me everything I needed to know. "Hello, sweetheart," I said softly, using the name I'd called her since childhood. "I think you and I need to have a talk." Tears spilled down her cheeks. She glanced at Derek's family scattered around the room, then back at me. "I can't," she whispered. "Not here." "Then let's go somewhere else. I saw a coffee shop on the corner of 5th Street. We can walk there together." "She has to cook dinner," Brenda called from the kitchen. "We're hungry." I turned to face her, and whatever expression was on my face made her take a step backward. "My daughter is leaving with me now. Cook your own dinner." Derek appeared at the top of the stairs. "Melissa, you don't have to go anywhere. Your mother can't just show up after 2 years and start giving orders." "I'm not giving orders. I'm inviting my daughter to have coffee with me." I held out my hand to Melissa. "Please, sweetheart, come with me." For a long moment, she didn't move. She looked at Derek, then at his parents, then at her feet. When she finally took my hand, it was ice cold and trembling. "I need to change," she said quietly. "No, right now. We're leaving right now." I didn't give anyone time to object. I kept hold of Melissa's hand and walked her out the front door, down the porch steps, and onto the sidewalk. Derek followed us onto the porch, shouting about family privacy and legal rights, but I ignored him. We walked down Maple Street like we'd done 1,000 times when she was a child, past the Johnson house and the Petersons, and the corner where she'd waited for the school bus. Melissa started crying before we reached the coffee shop. Not quiet tears, heaving sobs that shook her whole body. I guided her to a bench in the small park across from the shop, the same bench where Richard used to read the newspaper on Sunday mornings, and I pulled my daughter into my arms. She cried for a long time while I held her and stroked her hair and whispered that she was safe, that I was here, that everything would be okay. When the sobs finally subsided, I pulled back and looked at her. "Tell me," I said. "Tell me everything." And she did. It started 3 months after I left for Florida. Derek lost his job. He said it was temporary, that he'd find something better, that she needed to be patient and supportive. But months passed, and he didn't look. He stayed home, played video games, told her she was nagging him when she suggested he update his resume. Then his sister Brenda's husband Carl got fired. Derek invited them to stay. "Just for a few weeks," he said. The weeks became months. Derek's parents sold their condo in Arizona and needed somewhere to live. Derek invited them too. "Suddenly, the house was full," Melissa whispered. "And everyone expected me to take care of them. Cook, clean, do laundry." Derek said it was temporary, that they'd all find jobs, that I needed to be a good hostess, but nobody looked for work. They just stayed. She told me about losing her job. Derek's mother had called Morrison Financial, pretending to be Melissa, and resigned on her behalf. By the time Melissa found out, her position had been filled. With a sudden resignation on her record, she couldn't find another accounting job. The cleaning company was the only place that would hire her. She told me about the money. Derek had taken out a home equity loan, forged her signature on the documents, told her afterward that they needed the money for expenses. When she threatened to report him, he said it was her word against his, and his entire family would back him up. She told me about the smaller cruelties, sleeping on a cot in the unfinished basement because every bedroom was occupied by Derek's family, eating standing up in the kitchen after everyone else had been served, being screamed at if dinner wasn't perfect, if the floors weren't clean enough, if she bought the wrong brand of coffee. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, though I already knew. She looked at me with hollow eyes. "Your mother was dying, Mom. You had enough to deal with. And Derek was always there when you called. He'd stand right next to me, listening to every word. If I said anything he didn't like, there would be consequences." "Consequences?" She pulled up her sleeve. Faded bruises ran along her forearm. Old ones. I learned to be careful. Something inside me turned to ice, then to fire. I held her face in my hands, making her look at me. "Listen to me carefully," I said. "That house is not Derek's. It never was. Your father and I put it in a family trust specifically so it couldn't be signed away or borrowed against. The deed is in my name. The home equity loan is fraudulent. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" Hope flickered in her eyes. The first hope I'd seen. "Tomorrow morning," I continued, "I'm going to the bank to get the trust documents from our safe deposit box. Then I'm going to the police station. And then I'm going back to that house and I'm going to tell every single one of them to get out." "They won't go," she said. "Derek will fight you. Derek can fight all he wants. The law is on my side. And sweetheart, I spent 2 years watching my mother fight cancer. I learned a thing or two about fighting. We sat in that park until the sun started to set. Melissa told me everything. 2 years of abuse compressed into 2 hours of conversation. With each word, my grief over my mother transformed into something harder. Rage, pure, cold, focused rage. I took Melissa to a hotel near the highway. I checked us into a room with 2 beds, ordered pizza because my daughter wasn't cooking anything tonight. While she showered, I made calls. First to my son Michael in Portland. He listened without interrupting, then said 4 words. "I'm booking a flight." Then to my lawyer, Patricia Chen, who had handled Richard's estate and our trust documents. When I told her what happened, she was silent for a long moment. "Gloria," she finally said, "what they've done is criminal. The forged loan documents alone constitute bank fraud. We can fix this, but it's going to be a fight." "Good. I want a fight." The next morning, I was at the bank when it opened. The safe deposit box contained everything I needed. The original trust documents, the deed in my name, Richard's will establishing the trust, tax records going back 30 years, documentation that the house had never been in Melissa's name or Derek's name and could not have been legally used as collateral for any loan. I made copies of everything. Then I drove to the police station. The desk sergeant was skeptical at first. Family dispute, he probably thought. Old woman making trouble. But when I showed him the documents, when I explained about the forged loan and the physical abuse, his expression changed. He assigned 2 officers to accompany me. Officer Reynolds, a man about Derek's age with a military bearing, and Officer Jackson, a woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. "Just so I understand," Officer Jackson said as we drove to the house. "You own this property. These people have no legal right to be there. Your daughter has been held there against her will for 2 years. "That's correct. And the son-in-law forged documents to take out a loan on a house he doesn't own?" "Yes." She shook her head. "Ma'am, I'm real glad you came home." We pulled up to the house at 10 in the morning. The 2 police cars in the driveway sent a clear message. I saw Brenda's face appear in the window, then disappear. Derek came to the door before I could knock. He was trying to look confident, but I could see the fear in his eyes when he spotted the officers. "What's going on here?" His voice was tight. "I'm here to inform you that you and your entire family have 24 hours to vacate this property," I said calmly. "This house is owned by me, held in a family trust that was established by my late husband. You have no legal claim to it. These officers are here to witness that I've delivered this notice and to ensure the process goes smoothly." "You can't do this." Derek's voice rose. Melissa signed, "This is our house." Melissa signed nothing. She had no authority to sign anything. The house was never hers to give you. I handed him the eviction notice Patricia had prepared. 24 hours. "Where are we supposed to go?" Brenda had appeared behind Derek, her children clinging to her. "That's not my problem," I said. "You came here without my knowledge or permission. You exploited my daughter. You leave tomorrow or the sheriff will remove you." "The home equity loan," Derek started, "is fraudulent," I cut him off. "I never authorized it. The house was never in your name to borrow against. I'll be reporting it to the bank and to the police fraud division this afternoon. If you took out that loan, Derek, I suggest you get a very good lawyer." His face went white. Officer Reynolds stepped forward. "Mr. Whitmore, I strongly recommend you cooperate. What's being described here constitutes fraud, forgery, and domestic abuse. You really don't want to make this worse for yourself." Domestic abuse? Derek laughed nervously. I never laid a hand on her. My parents will tell you, my sister will tell you, Melissa is fine. Officer Jackson's expression hardened. Sir, we'll be speaking with your wife separately. I suggest you focus on packing. We left them standing in the doorway. As we walked back to the police cars, Officer Jackson turned to me. That took courage, ma'am. Most people would have just sent lawyers. That's my daughter's home. My home. I'm not letting anyone take it without a fight. Michael flew in that night. My son, tall and solid like his father, walked into our hotel room and wrapped first his sister, then me, in a bear hug. I'm sorry I wasn't here, he said to Melissa. I should have known something was wrong. None of us knew, she whispered. He was so good at hiding it. Michael stayed in his own room at the hotel, but he was at our door at 7 the next morning with coffee and determination. Let's go take back your house, Mom. When we arrived, the moving had already started. A rental truck sat in the driveway. Derek's father was loading boxes, his face red with exertion and fury. Brenda was hurrying her children into her minivan, shooting daggers at us with her eyes. Melissa gripped my hand as we walked up the front path. Her whole body was trembling. They're really leaving, she said. I didn't think they'd actually go. Derek appeared in the doorway. When he saw Melissa, his expression shifted, trying to soften into something that might once have been charming. Lissa, baby, you don't have to do this. We can work it out. It's your mother who's being unreasonable. Don't call her that, Michael said, stepping forward. Her name is Melissa, and you're done talking to her. Melissa, Derek tried again. This is between us. We're married. Don't let your family. I want a divorce. Melissa's voice was quiet but firm. I'm filing tomorrow. Derek's face contorted with rage. After everything I've done for you? I gave you a home. You gave her nothing, I said coldly. You took everything from her. Now you need to leave. You have 4 hours left. This isn't over, Derek said. I have rights. Your rights, Officer Reynolds said, stepping out of his patrol car where he'd been waiting, end where fraud and abuse begin. I suggest you finish packing. We stood on the lawn and watched them load the last of their belongings. Derek's mother walked past me without making eye contact. His father muttered something under his breath about lawyers and lawsuits. Brenda's children looked confused and scared, and for a moment I felt sorry for them. They hadn't chosen this. But then I looked at my daughter, at the bruises that were finally fading, at the weight she'd lost, at the light slowly returning to her eyes. My sympathy evaporated. At exactly 2 o'clock, the last car pulled out of the driveway. Derek was in the passenger seat, his face turned away. He didn't look back. Melissa started crying again. But this time, they were different tears. The house was a disaster. It took us 3 weeks to clean out what Derek's family had left behind. Damaged furniture, stained carpets, holes in the walls where they'd hung their pictures. The basement where Melissa had slept was damp and cold, the cot still sitting in the corner like an accusation. We hired contractors, replaced the carpets, repainted every room. Michael took time off work to help, and together we slowly restored the house to what it had been. Patricia filed fraud charges against Derek. The bank froze the illegal home equity loan pending investigation. Turned out Derek had a history. Credit cards in his sister's name, a car loan using his father's social security number. The district attorney was very interested. Melissa filed for divorce. The judge granted it in record time when she showed the documentation, the photos of the basement where she'd slept, the timeline of financial and emotional abuse, the medical records showing weight loss and vitamin deficiencies. The restraining order was immediate. She started therapy, twice a week at first, then once a week. I went with her sometimes, working through my own guilt about being so far away when she needed me. She got her old job back. When Patricia explained to Morrison Financial what had really happened, when she showed them proof that Melissa hadn't resigned, that Derek's mother had impersonated her, they were horrified. They offered her not just her old position, but a promotion, senior analyst with a raise. She started the following month. One evening in January, Melissa and I sat in the living room together. She was curled up on the couch with a book, her hair clean and shining, her face fuller, healthier. I was in Richard's old chair with my knitting, something I'd taken up again now that I was home. "Mom?" she said softly. "Yes, sweetheart? Thank you for coming home. for believing me, for fighting for me. I set down my knitting and looked at my daughter. I will always fight for you. Always. I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner. You were taking care of Grandma. You couldn't have known. I should have. I'm your mother. I should have heard it in your voice. She got up and came to sit on the arm of my chair, leaning her head against mine the way she'd done as a child. You heard it eventually, she said. That's what matters. You came home. We sat like that for a long time, in the house that was ours again. Outside, snow was falling, coating the lawn in white, covering the dead rose bushes I planned to replant in spring. Inside, we were warm and safe and together. Richard's photo smiled at us from the mantel. I like to think he was proud of us, proud of how we'd fought back, how we'd protected what was ours. Derek's trial is scheduled for April. Wire fraud, bank fraud, forgery, domestic abuse. His lawyer tried to plea bargain, but the DA wasn't interested. Patricia says he's looking at 5 to 7 years. His family scattered after the eviction. Brenda and Carl moved to Texas. His parents went to live with his brother in Nevada. Derek himself was living in a motel last I heard. Couldn't find anyone willing to take him in after what came out. I don't feel sorry for him. Not even a little. Some people think I'm too harsh, that I should have shown mercy, that family should forgive family. But Derek wasn't family. Family doesn't hurt you. Family doesn't trap you in a basement and steal your life. Melissa is my family. Michael is my family. This house, filled with Richard's memory and 30 years of love, is my family's home. I spent 64 years building this life, raised 2 children, buried a husband, nursed a mother through cancer. I've earned every gray hair on my head. And I'll be damned if I let anyone take what's mine. I'll be damned if I let anyone hurt my child and walk away. So I came home. I saw what was happening. I fought back, and I won. And every morning when I wake up in my own bed, in my own house, and smell coffee brewing in the kitchen where Melissa is humming to herself the way she used to before Derek broke her, I know I made the right choice. I came home. And I brought my daughter home with me.